Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Williston-Richmond Rotary, and thanks for visiting us, Jessica, and nice to see you again, Jerry. That's all our visitors today. All right. I heard the Veterans Day celebration was lovely. Thanks for everyone who participated and came up and came to that. I couldn't be there, but thanks for persevering through the rain.
Only rain when you had to pick.
Perfect. Vermont weather cooperating as usual. All right, we are going to get started today with a Rotary Minute from Chris.
I've always been curious about the wheel, the rotary wheel. So that's my, Lisa's going, what? That wheel right up there. It's on top of the four-way test, rotary wheel. And of course, it figures prominently, obviously, in the 4th of July parade, thanks to Sherry and others' hard work. So I decided to do a little research on it. It was actually kind of interesting. The wheel's been a symbol of Rotary since our earliest days. The first design was made in 1905 by Chicago Rotarian. Of course, that's where Rotary got started. Montague Bear, and that was alone was interesting. So, a gentleman by the name of Montague Bear. He was an engraver who drew a simple wagon wheel with a few lines under the wheel that depicted motion. The wheel was said to illustrate civilization, movement, and service work in action. Most of the early clubs had some form of a wagon wheel, they like this apparently, on their publications and their letterhead. The wheel was redesigned several times in the early years of the organization, and many times it would have underneath it the name of the club, or the city, or the village, wherever the club was from. In 1922, however, it was decided that all Rotary clubs should adopt a single uniform design. And that's how we arrived at an exclusive emblem of the Rotary. So the present gear wheel with its, I didn't count them, I'm taking this, 24 teeth and 6 spokes was adopted by Rotary International Association. The gear teeth around the outside represent the fact that work is being done. The 6 spokes represent strength and an outward distribution of Rotary's ideals of service, going outward into the community, to different vocations, and to different businesses that our Rotary members represented. In 1923, this is what I thought was interesting, a group of engineers advised that the gear wheel was mechanically unsound. Not being an engineer, but knowing how engineers think. It was mechanically unsound. It would not work without a keyway. Well, I'm not an engineer, didn't know what a keyway is. It's essentially that hole that the spokes radiate out from.
Notch in.
The notch in the hole. Okay, thank you. More specifically, my research wasn't that specific, Chris, but I appreciate that. Yeah. Would not work without a keyway in the center of the gear to attach it to a power shaft. So the keyway was added to signify the wheel was a worker, not an idler. The keyway is in the center is of great significance because it represents, this is the part I would like, represents the individual Rotary member who is the key factor in every club. Quality members are the keys needed for the hub to engage with the shaft and turn, putting energy into motion and creating power for the gears to work. Way above my ability to sort of think through. A standard description of the design with keyway was approved at the 1929 convention. Then there was a little bit more. It said the wheel not only identifies Rotary in the community, and of course, people are now learning that it's the Rotary float as that wheel goes by. I mean, this was just brilliant to think about that. But it also helps Rotarians identify with each other. It is one of the most familiar symbols in the world. So I don't know about you, but when I go into a community, oftentimes you'll see civic organizations with their signs. I just think that it's really neat. I had no idea. I just thought engineers, of course, they had trouble with that design. I just know a lot of them. Yes.
Having 6 spokes, is there any significance to each one?
I could not find that in my research under the history of it, how the I think it was always meant to be a wheel, maybe, I don't know, not an engineer, how to answer that question, but I will research that. So, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris, very interesting.
You witness. Not time. Way they can't hear.
Okay.
Okay,
I've been told it's hard to hear if you don't hold the mic consistently close to your mouth. How's that? It's like pretty good right here. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
We're talking about people online.
I think we have a very interesting speaker this morning. I know she has lots of fun things out on the table. And so, Barb, would you like to introduce? Oh, Marty? Okay. Oh, there you are. I didn't see you, Marty. Welcome to Rotary.
Morning, everyone. It is a privilege, a pleasure, and a joy to introduce a really, really good friend, Deborah Rubin, otherwise known to her friends, family, cognoscenti as Rubin or even Rubes. Excuse me. By way of background, Deborah's a physician who, in her career as a physician, was a radiation oncologist and has treated thousands of people in our region who have had cancer, and she's a wonderful, wonderful doctor. It's a daunting thing to go through, and if you're going to have someone guide you, it's Dr. Rubin. And she's also, by the way, she's not putting into the talk, but she's married to a dear friend of mine, Bill Adas, who I know some of you know, who runs cardiac rehab or ran cardiac rehab at the medical center. Anyway, Deborah developed an interest in bees, beekeeping, and making honey over years, and sort of transitioned into that. And she's really developed a passion for it. And of course, since she's the one doing it, she does it exceptionally well. And she's going to tell us about beekeeping in general and some of the biology of bees, but she's also going to focus on some of the major difficulties that bees have been having of late. So without further ado, Dr. Rubin, Rubes.
So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Marty and Barbara, and I'm happy to be here. I am fine if you guys have questions while I'm talking to interrupt me and ask, so not a problem. The topic of bees has become a real passion for me. They're incredibly fun and interesting creatures. There is an enormous wealth of research that's done in bees almost as much as it's done in humans. So people are always discovering really unusual and interesting things about bees. And they have been with us as historically, going back to the time of ancient Egypt. Honey's been found in the pyramids, still viable, still without any rot or evidence of decay. It's just, and bees have to live honeybees have to live sympathetically with humans. They're considered an agricultural farm animal, and they have, there's regulations around the bees that same as for any other creature that we are responsible for. So, we could. We can go to the next. No, nothing?
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
So, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of background on what's going on in the hives, which is kind of mysterious to people. And right now in the hives, the bees are they're probably one of their lowest ebbs. They're no longer foraging for food. she's quiescent. As an aside, queens will lay 1,000 eggs a day at their peak. So this is a very different pattern within the colony now at this point in time. And they will, in order to stay warm, the bees will surround the queen and they sort of unhinge their wings and they just shiver. It generates enough heat that the center of that cluster is about 85 degrees, keeping the queen warm. And the outer bees will just keep rotating in and around the circle, and that cluster will remain through the winter. In mid-January, the queen will start laying again. So the winter bees have now been hatching out. The winter bees will live for several months, unlike the summer bees, which only live for about 6 weeks, all the worker bees. And as they are, as the queen is starting to lay in preparation for March and April, the nutritional needs of the colony is changing, and they're starting to consume more of their honey. They're using their pollen for protein, and they're increasing their activity. And February and March, the number of bees, which at its peak in the summer might be 50 or 60,000 bees, will have reached its nadir. It'll be probably closer to 10 or 20,000 bees that remain after the duration of the winter. Okay, next slide. So the bees during the winter, if there's a warm day, they might come out for what's called a cleansing flight. They'll go and explore a bit near the hive on a warm winter day. They poop when they go out. That's part of a way for them to keep the hive clean, and they need to do that. And then they'll hopefully recluster, find their way back into the hive and recluster to get warm again. In April is when really everything starts really picking up its pace. They're really at that point looking for a lot of forest. But if you think about here in April, there's not a lot blooming, but trees are blooming, like the willow and alder are blooming, and maple will soon be blooming. So a lot of trees they're going to be their principal source of forage in the early springtime. But as a beekeeper, it's also the time that we need to get out there and maybe supplement them, give them some sugar syrup and some pollen patties, and try to make sure that we can bridge that point where they're still not able to get enough forage. And then May, June, July, August is when they're really going to town. The numbers are increasing. The queen is laying, daily 1,000 eggs. Whole cycle of the colony is in a major uptick, and the amount of energy that's consumed is quite remarkable. That when we look at honey, you don't realize that 1 teaspoon of honey is a lifetime of one bee's work. So it is. They will forage daily. They'll go out 50, 60 flowers, maybe 100 flowers to bring back nectar and pollen, and it is always amazing to me how much work is involved to make the honey for them. By September, they're starting to really shut down, and they are the drones, which are the male bees, get kicked out of the hive, and they'll just die in the cold. They're not welcome in the hive anymore. They've already served their job of fertilizing.
Be fun.
This point in time that the varroa mites are on the increase, so that's a big issue for beekeepers. And by October, again, we're still supplementing our hives. We're giving them, trying to bridge that food gap because they're still looking for food. So we'll be giving them sugar syrup and pollen supplements, and then preparing the hive by usually wrapping it and getting them warm.
May and June, you have risk of swarming.
Yeah, risk of swarming, so when when the bees are peaking and there's a lot of nectar flowing, the colony is very strong. Their natural instinct is to spread themselves around. And they are inclined to swarm because they're a strong colony. The swarming is an issue for the beekeepers, and certainly it's an issue for people that, live near the bees, because they'll go up into your attic, into the eaves of the house. And, they are, in that process of swarming it's a healthy sign for the colonies, but it's also problematic as a beekeeper to try to limit swarming. Occasionally bees will swarm if they're unhappy in their homes, but mostly they're swarming because they're have a lot of vitality.
That's one question.
Is part of that, you're gonna wanna create like new hives. Is swarming part of that mechanism by which they go out and create a new hive?
Yeah, well, as a beekeeper, it's you split the hives when you see that your numbers are really increasing. So you will take some of those bees and take the brood and create a new hive, and it will limit their swarming because you're have sort of done what they would naturally were inclined to do.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I'm trying to, so these bees are kept by humans in hives. What happens with beehives in the wild who are doing this, that aren't tended by humans?
Yeah, so are most bees don't survive, and that has to do with the fact that their forage isn't adequate for them, and that the varroa mites also infect the wild bees. So the varroa mites bring with them a lot of other diseases, multiple viruses, different kinds of issues that affect them nutritionally, and they usually don't overwinter. They'll die off because of that. But occasionally they'll have found a good place to live. They'll get well established and they can live there and keep going. But it's not typical for them to survive well. Yeah.
So when they go out and collect pollen and nectar, how are they bringing it back? And when they bring it back to the hive, I mean, how are they sharing it?
I have some slides to explain that, so I'll get to that. Barbara?
You mentioned that a number of them die off, was it in March or April or earlier? What happens if they die in the hive? How are they cleaned out of the hive?
They'll just drop through the hive, and as beekeepers will go out midwinter and clear out the bottom of the hive, there'll be a lot of dead bees underneath, and sometimes it impairs the airflow, so you gotta have people clear them out, but they just fall through the hive. Bees that die outside of the hive is a different issue. That can happen because they become disoriented or they got cold and couldn't make their way back, but most of the ones that are dying in the hive.
So if your bees happen to get these mites, is there a treatment for bee mites?
There are treatments for it, and it is an evolving area of research, and right now the treatments are concentrated on naturally occurring things. They're not using any pesticides or poisons. Most, at least hobbyist beekeepers don't. Occasionally there are still commercial beekeepers that are using some, but we use things like the oil of thyme, thymol, oxalic acid, formic acid, which is what ants sting you when they sting you. It's formic acid. So there's different. We're using all these, trying to use things that are non-toxic, and they're working, but not completely.
Is the pheromone indigenous, or has that been brought here as well? Because the honeybees aren't. So
Right. The
were they brought here with the honeybee?
varroa mites came from China, and really kind of peaking probably the late 1990s. And they are everywhere except, New Zealand is the only place that they have not detected
Probably when they didn't let 'em.
come in. Right. You're very good about that, yeah.
So,
So, do bees, they obviously must exist, but they, in the absence of humans, what do bees do, or what have they evolved?
Yeah, they do the same thing. They find a safe spot that's usually like a hollow of a tree is a classic thing, or under the eaves of a house. They line it with propolis, which is that really sticky resiny stuff that protects them, it seals them, it creates an environment that is immunologically favorable for them. And they make their comb. You'll see, open the hives and see that there's vertical comb, and they
So
forage and bring in their.
So what the beekeeper's doing is, in a sense, just modifying the natural.
Yeah, the big thing for beekeepers was the invention in the late 1800s of the type of hives that we have that allows us to take the honey out without running, without like scooping out, which was the old skits that, like the baskets, where you just kind of scooped out honey. The newer, well, from that late 1800s, that invention allowed us to get, not to disrupt the colony by harvesting the honey. So, the bees, when they're foraging, it's a fascinating thing. They have incredible senses that are very unique to this animal. They have 5 eyes. They are able to see much quicker than we can. You can get that sense when you see how quickly these will dart, but they are taking in and understanding what they're seeing much faster than we can. And they have receptors for UV light. They can see ultraviolet light. They do not see red light. They don't see the other side of the spectrum very well, but they can see ultraviolet, and things like a sunflower will look very different to them than it does to us. They are able to recognize patterns and to have judgments and spatial relationships. And this allows them to forage and know how to find their way, helps them find their way back, helps them find flowers. That's just kind of an interesting aside. Flowers contain a negative charge, and when the bees fly, they generate a positive charge. So when they go and sit on the flower, the pollen just rises up and adheres to their bodies because of that. And then that flower is now neutralized. It no longer has a charge. So other bees don't bother coming to it. They know that that's already been, seen a pollinator, which is, I think, is just kind of incredible. Their senses of smell and taste is also very sophisticated. They can smell much better than we can, probably not as good as dogs can, but they have 3 different sensory, their antennae, and then they have another kind of gland to help with sense of smell. They are within the hive, their principal means of communicating with one another is through pheromones. So they are emitting these different aromas that tell them different things. And the queen has her own set of pheromones. There are, one example of a pheromone is if you get stung by a bee and you quickly, if you smell where you were stung, you'll smell bananas. And it is a signal to the other bees that this is a danger, they should come and attack. When they smell that smell, they will converge. So it's important, if you get stung, just smoke that area so that that pheromone isn't in the area. They also vibrate in the hive. They send each other messages by vibrating, and they kind of are along, as they're walking along the wax, they're sending messages to each other. The queen has a pheromone on her feet that leaves a trail so the bees can track her through the colony as she's walking. And it is incredibly fascinating, all the ways that they're communicating with pheromones within the colony. A highly developed sense of smell. With regards to orientation, when they go out to forage, they are orienting with the sun. So on a cloudy day, bees tend not to fly. They get disoriented. If there is partially cloudy, then they can see rays of sunlight. Because they can see polarized light, which is like not only just a ray coming in from the sun to us, but they also see it at a 90-degree angle. So it's a much more complicated visual image, and it helps them to orient so that they can find their way back home, basically, and find their way out to wherever they're foraging. They also use gravity as a way of navigating through space, and they have this phenomenal spatial memory where they recall these images, and they will localize, like they'll memorize where their hive is and what it looks like. And when they do come back to the hive, they communicate with each other about where there's good forage. So the bees that are coming in, they'll land at the opening of the colony, and there'll be bees waiting there to receive their message. They'll do a bee dance, which I'm sure everyone's heard about that, but it is a way of telling the other bees, here's where the plant is, here's how far away it is, and send their fellows off to get more forage. They also have their use pheromones to communicate somewhat where good forage is, and there is within the hive when they bring the nectar in, they are handing it off to the nurse bees. The nurse bees there's a thing called bee stomach, and they partially digest the honey, and then they regurgitate it back to another bee, and that process kind of continues until they put the nectar into the comb, and from there it will eventually be evaporated to honey. But it's that process when they're bringing in the nectar. They bring in nectar, they bring in water, they bring in resin from certain trees, and they bring in pollen. Okay, next. So this is just kind of just to call your attention to all the plants that are important, and you probably can't see this, and I'll speak to it a little later, but I just did want to point out that the period of time when there's diminished nectar flow, when you see that dip in that dotted line, is when there's not really forage for the bees, and those are critical points for when the beekeeper and all of our neighbors are important for helping the bees. So that's sort of just the point I want to make with that slide. So in Vermont, these are all familiar plants. Heather, willow, squill, I love squill, and dandelions. And so all these things are coming up usually April and are important, but not adequate nutrition for the bees. The bees need more than just a single bloom. Like, look at all those dandelions and think this is great, but it's not adequate nutrition for them. It's only partial. And then, going through the summer and spring and looking at the other plants that are available to them. Next slide. And pardon? Yeah.
That's what we got.
Yeah. And next. And then goldenrod, which is usually, it's a huge source of food for bees. It is, they're plentiful in meadows, but not so much in people's yards, so it's depending upon where you are in terms of cultivating goldenrod. We tend not to do that. It's more of a pest to us, but it is a really important source of food for all the pollinators. It's not a complete food for them either. And then a little later, sort of the last ones really in our gardens are the sedum and the asters. Okay, next.
Yeah.
So, colony collapse disorder, which I'm sure you all were aware of, was first noted in 2006. And what happened that year was the beekeepers went out into their hives in the spring and found them empty. There were no bees in the hive. There was honey, there was plenty of nourishment for them, but the bees had all flown. And it created a big surge in, trying to sort this out, because bees are responsible for billions of dollars worth of food. They are a huge commodity in that they are essential for pollinating so many foods that we are dependent upon. And it's that piece, probably more than anything, that is really a driver for motivating people to want to keep them pollinators going. But the reason for the colony collapse was never fully sorted out. And there are certainly a lot of things that were at play. Commercial beekeeping means bees are getting stressed, they're getting transported. When they're being transported back and forth across the country from Georgia to California to do the almonds, or up to Maine to do the blueberries, they're carrying diseases that are now getting spread all around the country. There is evidence that the beekeepers were breeding too intensively, so they're losing some of the genetic variance that's necessary to keep any animal healthy. And mites, the varroa mite was a huge factor. It's first being seen and really noted as an important carrier of viruses to the bees. And pesticides is another issue, particularly neonicotinoids, which I'll address a little bit, but all of those things were felt to be the cause of what has happened. And but it still was never really fully sorted out, and it kind of petered out on its own. So next slide. So since 2006, the reports for colony collapse disorder have really diminished. They continue to kind of drop down, but the demise of bees in the spring is still very much an issue. So most beekeepers in Vermont now, they reported 25 to 85% of beekeepers are losing their bees in the spring. And that maybe they'll come out and find that it's just a dead out, that the bees are some of the bees have starved to death, that they are diseased in some way. And the cause for all that, again, is multifactorial. It's not known exactly what's going on, but it's being heavily researched. So,
And we have just a couple minutes.
yeah,
We're about a couple minutes.
I need to finish up. Oh, okay. Well, let me just say, because I just want to make a couple points about the varroa mites, pesticides, and lack of forage for the bees are things that we can probably help with. And next slide. In 2040, this year, June 17th, the state legislature passed a bill that prohibited the use of neonicotinoids in Vermont. And that will go into effect next year. It is already in effect in Quebec and New York. And so that was a huge step in the right direction, because neonicotinoids cause paralysis and neurologic issues for the bees. It's very deadly and horrible for the bees. So that's a big break. Next slide. And just in terms of supplementing nutrition, particularly during periods when there isn't a lot of forage around. I think that's something that people can probably help with. So next slide. This is just to show you, this is just pollen. This is nectar getting dried out, and on the top left is a frame showing the brood, which are all the bees that are they're growing and getting ready to hatch. In the corners, there's some capped honey. In the lower corner where you see it's kind of bulbous, that's grown brood. So that's just kind of a normal looking frame in a hive. A healthy. And this is a honey frame, so this is all capped honey. Next slide. And this is just to explain how we get from nectar to honey. And does anybody need to leave, or do I?
No, we just have to move on. I mean, I'm sure we could talk about bees all day. They're so fascinating.
Okay, well, yeah, then let me just keep going and I'll just get to the very end. So, one thing I do want to say in terms of helping is doing some plantings in your garden that will promote the pollinators. And you've seen around, there's pollinator gardens around. Planting trees is probably more important than planting flowers. The trees that flowering trees are more important forage for the bees. Next one. And Vermont lawns is a big waste of space and not a good thing really in terms of our environment. And I would just like to encourage everyone to start to think about changing what they're planting in their yards and to switch up their lawns. So next one. And there are 3 plants that the University of Minnesota has recommended for us to replace our lawns with. One of them is common self-heal, which is a low-growing plant, doesn't ever need to be mowed, and is a great source of food for pollinators. Next slide, please. White clover, it has to be Dutch clover. Hybrid plants don't, like a hybrid clover, won't work because of how the bees perceive them. And the third plant is creeping thyme. So it, again, doesn't need to be mowed. It's beautiful, and it's great source of food. So those 3 plants to replace your garden, your lawns, would be a huge benefit to the pollinators. Okay.
Thank you so much. That I wish we could have you had a half an hour. By the way, Deborah and her colleagues make the great honey. They don't, the bees, they have their honey is.
There are examples of it.
Right. So thanks for coming and being here so early. And in your honor, we are making a contribution to the Williston Central School Mentoring Program. Great. That's this. And thank you so much for
Thank you guys for
fascinating
having
talk.
me, and encourage all of you to enjoy the bees and revise your garden.
You have one more thing to do.
One more thing. Can
Pick a winner.
you pick the winning raffle ticket? Oh, yeah. Well,
So,
2 today.
2. So 9750669
669 are the last 3 numbers.
and 659.
And 659. I guess I need to check my tickets. They're over there. Thank you.
It's you.
And-
It's you.
It's me?
Yeah.
I won?
Yeah.
Oh.
I won.
And Deborah, I noticed that you have a bunch of jars of honey over here with some popsicle sticks.
Yes, if
Are
people
you
can sample.
Doing samples?
Yeah.
Okay, so, so stick around and try some honey. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Fascinating.
yeah.
We'll have to have you back for part 2. Okay. You and, Debbie wanted me to mention that there is a Martin Luther King Day celebration. I believe it's January 19th, but I will send the info for that. Chris is nodding her head. Okay,
It's Monday, January 19th. It'll be at the Wilson Central School beginning at 3:00.
Okay.
And we'll give you more details.
it's the Martin Luther King Day celebration. I'll put all the info in the recap email. And then it'll stay in that list of events that I've been keeping in there so we can keep track of all our dates. Rafa wanted me to tell you all that there's another Bill Skiff Story Slam meeting on Monday morning, the 18th at 7:30. And if you want the Zoom link for that, to contact her, or you can contact me. The Charlotte Shelburne Heinsberg Club, who we have a visitor from today, has invited us to come to their meeting on December 18th. They're having the CVU Madrigals come, so there'll be some music and holiday themed things, so that should be really fun. And they're hoping that we can do like a meeting swap. So they meet on Wednesday mornings.
Yes, we had met someone from the club last week and we talked about that.
Yeah.
It's not, just so you know, it's not the full madrigals, but we're having 3 of the women who are coming, so it'll be
Okay,
just.
wonderful.
Wednesday morning, where at the Methodist Church in Shelburne.
So it's at the Methodist Church in Shelburne, and I will also put that information in the recap email. And who knows, maybe we can have a bunch of us carpool over or something. They're also a 7:30 meeting, so we can get up really early 2 days in a row. It'll be fun. I got an email yesterday that, yesterday was our club charter anniversary. So 29 years. And I think maybe some of the people in this room have been here that long. Has anyone been here since the very beginning?
Don't say with that quizzical.
Yeah.
It's close. Dave, awesome. So
Dave,
29 years, amazing work. That means 30 years next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, mostly, yeah, follows right along.
Does anyone else have an announcement that I missed? Vince?
Yeah, just.
So this is for the speakers, speaker chairs. So we found out that when you have a YouTube video, it somehow switches the sound. We don't hear it in here, but the people online, they couldn't hear most of it. So what we'll do is I'll get the video, the YouTube video, and send it out. But if you have future chairs coming up, we probably won't be able to use YouTube videos.
Okay. Anything else? All right, then I will hand it over to Chris for the next part.
Goody, goody.